Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you. Welcome to the 8th annual José Muñoz Award ceremony. My name is Matt Brim, and I am the Executive Director of CLAGS, the Center for LGBTQ Studies here at the CUNY Graduate Center. On behalf of CLAGS and our co-sponsor here, the Office of Public Programs, we are thrilled to have you here with us tonight to honor and to fet and to thank Alok Vaid-Menon, the 2024 winner of the José Muñoz Award. CLAGS is the first university-based research center for the study of LGBTQIA people and history and culture and ideas. The work at CLAGS is complex, but our vision is simple. We believe in free, public LGBTQ studies for everyone, for all of our CUNY students, for all of our New York City communities, and for our international friends. That vision depends on you, especially in what are very troubling times for queer studies in higher education, both ideologically and financially. And so I just want to start tonight by asking you to support our vision by donating to CLAGS. And you can do that in a couple easy ways tonight. Those of you who are here in the audience got a purple card when you walked in. On the back of that card is a QR code. This is our capital campaign. It's a different legacy for LGBTQ studies, and it's very in line with our public mission here at CUNY. You can scan that QR code, and that will take you to our donation page. You can also go to clags.org, where you'll see a donate button, and if you want to mail in a check, find me afterward, and I'll tell you how to do that, or it's on our website. The other way you can support CLAGS tonight, after the event on a table outside, you will see tote bags with CLAGS' name on it, and in those tote bags are 3 books. One, Cruising Utopia by José Muñoz, the man after whom this award is named, and then 2 books published by the Feminist Press by CLAGS, and those books are Queer Ideas, a volume that collects the first 10 years of the David R. Kessler lectures, and then a book we just published in 2023, Queer Then and Now, and that collects the lectures from 2002 to 2020. So it's almost the whole history of the Kessler lectures, which is the other signature event that we offer every year. And you can buy all 3 books and the CLAGS tote for $100, and you can buy that on the way out. Thank you for your support, whether you are able to give tonight or not. The format for this evening, we will have a moderated conversation and then audience Q&A. You were given index cards when you came in. Please, please, please write neatly. We will collect those questions in a little bit, but we need to be able to read them, and then we will use those as part of our Q&A. The one other thing I want to do tonight is to introduce Deborati Biswas, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at the New York City College of Technology. Tonight is a very special night because of Alok. It's also a special night because we get to introduce Debbie as the new incoming co-chair of the Board of Directors of CLAGS. Congratulations, Debbie.
Thank you so much, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored and excited to serve as the next co-chair of the CLAGS Board of Directors. But tonight, we at CLAGS are so thrilled to hold space with you during Pride Month to celebrate our annual José Muñoz Award event. The José Muñoz Award was created to honor an LGBTQ community leader and activist for their advocacy and promotion of LGBTQ studies. José Muñoz, as you all might know, was an influential scholar in the fields of queer and trans studies, performance studies, and Latinx studies. His capacious body of work includes field-defining books, numerous influential articles, book chapters, essays in journals, anthologies, artist catalogs, and so much more. But José Muñoz was central to our CLAGS family as a board member and a tireless supporter of this organization. So please support us as well. This award thus serves as a way to amplify and celebrate LGBTQIA+ performers, activists, and visionaries who further what Muñoz dubs as the, quote, mode of desiring that allows us to see and feel beyond the quagmire of the present. Now more than ever, we need that. This year, we're honoring a relentless advocate for LGBTQIA+ rights, Alok Vaid-Menon. Alok is an internationally acclaimed poet, writer, comedian, public speaker, actor, and a fashion icon. They are the author of celebrated works such as Beyond the Gender Binary, Femme in Public, and Your Wound, My Garden. I must say, no traditional introduction can do justice to Alok's brilliance. I'm therefore going to invite Smaran Dayal, a member of the CLAGS Board of Directors, to engage in a conversation with our honoree and help us sense the warmth of the queer commons in Alok's dynamic presence, and learn a bit more about Alok and their work. Smaran Dayal is an assistant professor of literature at Stevens Institute of Technology. Please join me in welcoming Alok and Smaran to the stage. Take it away.
Thank you all for being here. We're really excited. Alok, welcome. We at CLAGS, as Debbie said, are all very excited to honor you today with the José Muñoz Award. The Muñoz Award, as Debbie said, recognizes the work of an LGBTQ community leader or activist for their advocacy and promotion of LGBTQ studies. So to get us started this evening, we will begin with a conversation with you so that the audience, both in person and online, as well as those who might watch the recording of this event in the future, have a chance to learn about you and your work. So let's start with your biography, if that's okay. Alok, you're from Texas, the child of immigrant parents. How did you get here? How did Alok happen?
Well, I just want to say thank you to heterosexuality. I know that's like a hot take at CLAGS, but it really made me who I am, you know? And I feel like I don't give back enough. So I just wanted to begin there. Once upon a time, there was heterosexuality, and then there was me. And I think I was brought to this earth to make sure that heterosexuality could heal itself. Beginning with my family, who's in the crowd tonight. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I was born in a place called Texas. You might have heard of her. You know, we've been in the news for all the right reasons. And what I really love about being from Texas is that the racism, the homophobia, the transphobia was profoundly unambiguous. And unambiguous racism, homophobia, and transphobia is a profound invitation to figure out who you are on your own terms very quickly, because you can't rely on external validation. You have to resource a kind of verb from elsewhere. So I think that from one perspective, I could say that I was closeted. From another, I could say I was engaged in an artist residency called disassociation for about 18 years. where I was just studying and contemplating how to bloom into the most obnoxious version of myself. And so that when I had the wherewithal and the time, I guess, I was very busy doing other things like chess club, but when I decided chess club was just not enough for my dreams, my queer dreams, I decided to liberate myself, emancipate myself really from traditional gender norms and decide to have fun, which is a synonym for being trans. So I would like to thank Texas and heterosexuality, two strange bedfellows that gave birth to me.
I absolutely love that. Transness as fun. That's really wonderful. So you're a poet, as Debbie said, you're a poet. In fact, that's how I first encountered you as part of Dark Matter, performing in Berlin many years ago. You're a poet, you're a comedian, you're a public speaker, a designer, a model, a fashion icon. I think it's absolutely apt to say, and an actor. Are all these different hats, or is there a through line? Perhaps performance, or how would you understand that through line?
Exhibitionism. You know, there's some people in the crowd that can testify tonight that when I was younger, I used to take my mom's chunnis and dance to anyone who would watch, really, neighbors, anyone. I always wanted to share my beauty with the world. And I actually think that's what we do as young people before that awful word shame comes into our vocabulary. And so from a young age, I knew the quiet genius that I think a lot of young people know, which is that all of us have a story to tell. All of us have a beauty to share. And then adults mostly get jealous and envious of that freedom, and so they make it feel like we're wrong for wanting to be seen, for wanting to bloom, and so we internalize that, and we hide ourselves from the world. And that's what causes most problems in the world, like war and bad fashion. People hiding themselves from their own beauty, which is truly one of the most devastating atrocities of our time. So I suppose that for me, I don't really believe in genre. I think genre is unambitious, but also just intellectually dishonest. Genre comes from the need to market ourselves as a thing. And the worldview that I'm trying to inaugurate is one in which we don't have to be one thing in order to be experienced, let alone we don't need to be known in order to be experienced. Being known is really boring. I want to continue to be mysterious to myself. Why would I want to know myself? Like, okay, then I just die, you know? Like, the joy of being alive is continually confounding and befuddling everything that I thought about myself and figuring it out over and over and over again, that kind of discovery. So I suppose for me, there's a word that doesn't exist in English yet that I should probably make up right now in homage to José Muñoz and all queer theorists who have taught me that you just get to make up things, and it's a beautiful practice of world making. There's a word for hearing your bio being read and being like, really? Because I feel like I have to use these words like poet, comic to make myself legible. But I suppose the larger question is legible to what and for what reasons? All I am is alive. That's the most honest definition. And what it means to be alive, which is very different than existing, what it means to be alive is to express, is to emote, is to create, is to feel. And that's what I'm doing, and those feelings take containers. That was me announcing to the crowd that my birthday is July 1st, and I am indeed a water sign because I believe feelings are the foundation of everything. Feelings are the most honest experience of being alive. So I just have a lot of feelings, and I put them in different things, poems, plays, TV shows, outfits. But they're all basically ways of saying, hey, I'm here, and I'm excited to be here.
As a Venus in Cancer.
Thank you for trusting us with that information. Especially during times like this, your vulnerability is important.
It's precious, but hopefully I won't emote in front of the audience. I mean, maybe I should this evening. No, but that's really thought provoking about having to sort of put ourselves in boxes to make ourselves legible. So thank you for sharing that. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about the docu-short Alok that was executive produced by Jodie Foster and directed by Alex Hedison, which made its debut at the Sundance Festival in 2024, this year? For those of us who haven't been able to see the film, how do you think of it? And what is Jodie Foster like?
Well, it's screening right now at IFC. If people want to check it out, it'll be there for a few weeks as part of the Sundance Shorts, which we're really excited by. Let's see. You know, I've been chronologuing my own life for forever, really. And it felt very vulnerable to invite someone else to do it for me because people can't even take photos of me right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, when I get a bad photo, I'm like, reconsider that because I'm giving you material to work with and something just got lost in translation. I can have compassion for everyone except people who don't take good photos of me. It's growing pains. I'm learning, healing, transforming. So actually, it's a very vulnerable thing for me to give up self-documentation. I think self-documentation has always been integral to my practice because it's not that we lack transgender representation, it's that we're overrepresented by cis people's anxieties and projections about us. So what most people's point of entry to trans life is cis people's own self-hatred. So they conceive of transness as the worst thing that could ever happen to them. And that's cute, but kind of irrelevant to me because transness is actually the reason I'm alive. Transness made my life worthwhile and beautiful and wonderful, and I wanted to show that. So much of my art came from a frustration that the only vocabulary I had to describe my power was cis people's pathologization of it. And we never took time to actually realize, like, why were the eugenicists, why were the colonists, why were even the queers and the gays so obsessed with eradicating specifically those of us who are gender nonconforming and transfeminine? It's because they were jealous. So jealous because they thought they had to die in order to be free. And we did it here. So once I realized that, like, oh, I had a responsibility to document my life and to show people that a gender nonconforming life was not only possible, but actually profoundly fun, then I started to realize, oh shit, self-documentation is good, but it's not enough. You have to have trust in opening yourself up to being documented by someone else, which I was nervous about. This is a city of Paris is burning. This is a history of trans and gender nonconforming people, especially those of us who are racialized, mattering more as archival footage than real life. Knowing that Andy Warhol and so many queer artists make money off of depicting us, taking photos of us, visualizing us, but that doesn't actually percolate into substantive shifts to our material conditions. No matter how many documentaries I do about trans life, that doesn't protect me from being spat on the street. I knew this. So I came in with that. When Alex asked me, hey, can I follow you around with a camera? I said, no. And then we spoke about it until it was yes. And part of the way that I said yes was I need to ensure that this is collaborative. I need to ensure that this is not a documentarian making a documentary about a trans person of color. This is about you also making a documentary about yourself, because that's what all those documentaries got wrong. You look at us because you need us to look at yourself. So what was integral to me in the project, and what the documentary sort of concludes with, is that we is my preferred pronoun. And what I mean by that is I think the most controversial pronoun is not they, it's we, because in a country, in a culture, in a world that frames everything as oppositional, us or them, my role, my existence as a non-binary artist is to find harmony where others perceive dissonance, and to insist that everything you think is just about trans people or just about gay people, it also is about you, it's about all of us. And so working with Alex was beautiful and healing for me because I got to practice that real time. I got to say, no, don't photograph me when I'm looking unglamorous. Actually, do photograph me when I'm looking unglamorous only in these specific scenarios. And it was really beautiful to be able to have agency, and I think that was very different than other projects that I've been involved with. Jody came on after the fact, and what's been really fun about working with her is she's actually such an academic, and she'll tell me, if I had not done this whole acting thing, I just would have been a professor, and that makes a lot of sense. She is very well-read, very intelligent, reads the news, and so what's been really fun with her is that she can engage with what I'm doing intellectually, which is rare in my entertainment industry. Sometimes I remember that I'm in an industry where people get paid to recite other people's ideas, words, and lines. It's a confusing thing sometimes, acting, especially these days, where I'm like, what's your point of view? And people will be like, we're allowed to do that. So what's really, I think, exemplary about working with Jody is that she has cultivated an intellectual life alongside it, and I think that, for me, made me feel like entertainment was something I could do. There's so few role models in commercial entertainment of people who care and who are thinking critically about the work that they're putting in the world. And she's also just a masterclass in boundaries, which is really helpful for me. When we were at Sundance together, of course, we would get flummoxed with dozens of people with photos of her as like age 12 asking for signatures, and I've never heard anyone say no with so much distilled clarity, hard-earned wisdom and grit. And I think that's something that we can all learn better, that no is a permanent art installation, that no is a poem unto itself.
It's beautiful. No is a poem unto itself. I also really like what you said about we as maybe the most important pronoun, and getting us all, I mean, both this evening, but also in your past appearances, getting us to think about how often transphobia or homophobia is often about the person's own wounds and the person enacting harm towards other people than simply about the person that they're enacting it towards. Like, I've personally really appreciated sometimes online seeing your very gentle responses, not because that's due a person who enacts violence online or is expressing transphobic views, but to frame your response in terms of, I see you're the one in pain, and I see that you're directing it out towards me. That's really beautiful, thank you. So many of us here at CLAGS and in queer studies deeply appreciate not just your style, which we do, which is truly fabulous.
Imagine if I had showed up in a t-shirt and jeans. I really thought about it. I really thought about it because I was like, okay, would the queer theorists then be like, actually normativity's back in, everyone? And there's something different, a different practice of signification going on where we like occupy, you know, but then I feel like, am I too on the nose wearing multicolor and pride at CLAGS? Like, read the room.
If it wasn't for Lahore Vajistan, I might, face a similar risk. So thank you for your help with the outfit. So many of us at CLAGS and in queer studies deeply appreciate not just your style, which is truly fabulous, but it's, I think what we specifically, and you talk about this, but what we specifically appreciate is the affirmation of colors, pushing back against chromatophobia, the affirmation of femininity, trans femininity in particular, and hair. This is something that often does not get talked about enough, but sort of the way in which hair politics, specifically around South Asians, plays out. And so your affirmation of that in your style really leaves an impact on us. So not just your style, but your philosophy of style is something I'd love to hear from you about this evening. And style is something that goes beyond taste, which is important, and gender-expansive clothing, accessories, and makeup. But style is something that can be developed by confronting and working through past trauma, whether it's gender trauma primarily or other forms. So maybe if you could talk to us about this today and maybe also touch on the outfit that you're wearing, if you feel like it.
Yeah. Style is the first vocabulary I had to describe who I was on my own terms. before I had the vocabulary of gender and race and all those things, I had color, I had print, I had textile. And I feel like I learned sovereignty of my body through style. Being able to choose what I wore was really important to me. My mother has a unique and unparalleled ability of gifting me exactly what I don't want. It's profoundly uncanny. So there was a moment maybe at age 10 or 11 where I just had my first protest. I said, absolutely not, darling. I was meant for a different section of the clothing department store. And I started to really intentionally self-style myself, and that was my queerness, that was my vocabulary, that was my way of saying something different is going on here. And what I love about style is that it's protean, it's transitory, it shifts. So I didn't have to commit. Style taught me that every identity is just a comedic bit, that I can be taken seriously if I put on a pair of fake glasses. That's so funny. And that academic institutions like this one are just aesthetics of exclusion, where you dress a certain way, act a certain way as a way to perform that you're somehow superior or gatekeep knowledge. It's all a joke, it's absurd. So style was a masterclass that all power was play, and that I could shapeshift into whatever I wanted to be. Style was also a way of reconnecting with my joy in a world that would rather me be miserable. It was about dressing for myself. I see the distinction between fashion and style as fashion is wearing what other people want you to wear, style is wearing what you want to wear. And so when I would put together outfits, concoct them, I would just basically, I would dress in a way to ask myself a question. And this was even kind of pre-verbal, so I could say like a question about like, who am I? But it wasn't even that, it was a sense of exploration of what kind of fantasy do I want to embody? What kind of Delulu am I interested in being? Be the Delulu you wish to see in the world, everyone. And so now I still hold on to that practice of style, but I think what's difficult is the violence. I genuinely feel like it's a tragedy that the world is so transphobic, because imagine specifically what I would wear, you know? Like imagine specifically just the drama, you know what I'm saying? You know, like just the gowns that I would wear just on a Tuesday afternoon if I didn't have to worry about someone trying to like assassination plot me, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like how much beauty is lost because men specifically don't feel like they can be beautiful, and so take it out on the entire world. It's devastating. So what's hard now is that often the place that I feel safest to express the fullest extent of my style is in a photo shoot or on stage, which are both forms of captivity. People are so much more comfortable with me as an image, not as a three-dimensional human being, because that's what people have always felt about gender nonconforming people, things you can pluck from the archive to prove that we existed, or things that you can look to as the future of gender as if I'm not fucking here right now. Or on a stage, which is another synonym for a cage, because people think it's ephemeral, a costume that I put on to entertain them, and then I go off, and then I return to the realm of normalcy. But I've been beaten in the very outfits that I've been applauded for on stage. I just finished a performance tour in Europe. It was my UNICEF mission to feed the children of Europe. And I got called a faggot multiple times in the same outfit that I would wear on stage. And that has to be part of the record, because often the only way that queer aesthetics circulate is as if the fabulosity just comes from nowhere. The fabulosity comes from proximity and adjacency to violence and vitriol. I have to be fabulous because I have to love myself harder than anyone could ever hate me. I have to become a Teflon pan. I don't cook, but I try to sprinkle my extemporaneous speaking with cooking metaphors. I find them very compelling as an idea. So I have to be invincible in it. And I also wonder what my style would look like if there wasn't the presumption or the necessity of my invincibility. What a kind of more vulnerable aesthetic would look like for me. And that makes me feel sad, because as an artist, I believe that when we create worlds where people cannot create, those are not those are hardly worlds. They're half worlds. They're holograms. The worlds I want to be in is where people can explore every inkling, every bit, every thought, run around it, even if it ends up being a horrific idea. At least we tried it, you know? So what I also believe is that style is a spiritual practice. There's a reason why, you know, in my pastime, in my leisure time, I love reading what colonists wrote about indigenous people as a way to justify colonization. We all have our things, you know, and what they were fixated on, especially when it came to South Asia, is fashion and aesthetics, draping, body adornment, tattoo practices, jewelry, color. And they could have just asked us where we shop. You know, they could have just been like, yeah, you know, I'm trying to diversify my aesthetic, you know, but
We'll hook you up with the tailor.
right, they were so envious of the life force that was style, and that's why it's devastating to me that in many academic contexts, style is still seen as just a superficial, kind of feckless, a ridiculous, unrigorous academic practice, when in fact, style is like embodied history, style is relationship with the divine, style is a ceremony. For me, when I'm getting dressed, I'm making an altar on my body to every ancestor that died so that I could be. I feel that very poignantly in this moment of anti-drag laws, which are a rehashing of cross-dressing laws, which are a rehashing of colonial anti-sumptuary laws, which are a rehashing of so many other ways in which you controlled populations by controlling what they wore. I can only exist in this city, in this dress, because people were beaten to a pulp for it and created fun hangouts like the Stonewall riots, you know, just a really chic party that all the coolest people were at. And it was only because of people's resistance and insistence on being fabulous despite it. So I have a lot of photos, including the back of my phone, of gender nonconforming people resisting being forced into men's or women's clothes. The back of my phone, I have Kenneth Ho, who in 1952 was arrested by an LAPD officer, Detective Holt, and Detective Holt is trying to give Kenneth a suit, and Kenneth is like, no. And Kenneth saying no gave birth to me. Trans people saying, why would I be boring? Because that's what it's really about. When I say transness is a synonym for fun, what I'm actually saying is like, we all have a choice in the world, be beautiful or be boring. And as Mark Aguilar said, like, I'd rather be beautiful than male. Actually, so much of the bad rep that transness got was that we were just doing this because we were broken, but actually it's because we had insight, that we should take our cues from flowers. They're just blooming, hanging out, and then they die. It's kind of iconic. They're not very shy. They're just interested in being glamorous. And so how dare they say that we're against the order of nature when nature, as Dr. Joan Roughgarden says, offers us a smorgasbord of possibilities on how to be, but also how to be beautiful.
Wow. I'm just sitting with that thought of all the possibilities that are extinguished through our fear of femininity, through our fear of gender nonconformity, of all the fabulous people that exist in the world but can't lean into it and can't show themselves, right? Yeah, thank you so much. I want to ask you something specifically connected to this, actually, because you've talked about how this oppression kind of starts in childhood. It starts with adults stepping in and telling children how to express themselves and what's okay, what's not okay, how they are allowed to show up. So you do so much, genuinely do so much to undo thinking about sort of normative gender. Yet gender is one of the first ways to be right or wrong that children learn. What do you say to young people who often have few resources at their disposal, you know, you had your chunnis, who still live at home with their parents, about resisting gender norms within the constraints that they inevitably face?
You know, it's very painful for me that I'm often one of the first visibly gender nonconforming racialized people that people have access to. Oftentimes, people will come up to me after my shows or my gigs and be like, "You're the first person I ever saw who looked like that." Because when you're talking about extinguishment, right? Like, what a perverse, fundamentally ridiculous state of affairs. Because there should be millions of us. And in fact, there were. Even in a city like this, I would say in 1920 and 1910, you'd see more of the fairies and girl boys running around. But then because of strategic political decisions made by gay and feminist movements toward respectability and away from us, because we were embodied disrespectability. That's what fun is, by the way. So it's very confusing and jarring to me because it's almost as if gender nonconformity is made into an image that's separate than me. And I'm like, that's just who I am. Like, I'm not doing this to like inspire people. I'm not doing this to like show that non-binary gender is real. I'm literally just being beautiful, you know, read the room. So it's very confusing because gender nonconformity has been so profoundly politicized that my personhood is rendered an aesthetic, a trend. Oh, gender-free fashion. What? I didn't cross the gender binary. The gender binary crossed me, right? The gender norms were superimposed on my beauty. I was just out here vibing. We've always been out here vibing, and then people got insecure about it. So what I tell a lot of young people is, people will persecute you for your brilliance and your genius. It's not, the people who are targeting and bullying you are not targeting and bullying you because you're weak. They're gonna say that. They're gonna say that you lack something, that you're broken. But ask yourself, there's a zillion other things they could be doing with their time. Playing Fortnite, like cooking with a Teflon pan. There's a lot of things they could be doing. And they're choosing to spend their precious time on earth persecuting you. It's because you're powerful. So actually, all of those things are misdirected love letters. They're not vulnerable enough to say, teach me. They're not vulnerable enough to say, I'm envious of your freedom. So instead that got lost in the mail and they'll say faggot, but that's just a synonym for I'm envious for your freedom. So actually remember that you're powerful, and then everything that they're doing is just their own internal war. You're just caught in the crossfires of their internal war. So don't shapeshift, don't try to make yourself more palatable, don't think that if you don't have rainbow hair or if you fit in, then they're gonna love you. They'll never love you if they can't love you in your fullness. That's not love, that's coercion. Thank you, Bell Hooks, for teaching us that.
It's so strange. Yeah. Wonderful. Could you pass us the cards whenever? So if you haven't yet filled out a question, you have the opportunity to do that. Please remember to write neatly. A lot of us are now used to sort of type and not handwriting. So if you get the chance and you'd like to submit a question, please do, and we'll collect them and bring them up here. But yeah, I mean, I was just sort of struck by what you said, Alok, and thinking about, there's this absurd, to me, what seems like an absurd binary, and of course, one of the two in this binary seems much more dangerous than the other, of either being perceived as a threat or as a trend, and not of people allowing themselves to lean into whoever they are. And I know lean in sort of has its own sort of connotation there, but just to step into what they feel and what style resonates with them, and embrace that, right? I'm gonna move our conversation towards an intersectional issue. All of this is, of course, intersectional, but there's something that we talked about beforehand that has been omnipresent, and rightly so. So as you know, CLAGS issued a similar statement in solidarity with Palestine as your call for a ceasefire, and you joked earlier about sort of, helping the European children, but you've genuinely shared UN fundraisers on your social media presence for children in Palestine, and you have sort of expressed a call for a ceasefire and solidarity. And so I guess I want to ask you, within this context, what do you think the role of queer and trans people is in responding to the war in Palestine?
Thank you for that question. It's very strange to me, this pinkwashing thing, because people keep on acting as if the US is this trailblazer for LGBTQ rights. I'm from Texas, you know? Actually, the specific forms of homophobia and transphobia that are being engineered in places like Texas, Florida, and Tennessee are being globalized across the entire world. I was just meeting with some trans activists in Pakistan who said that in the Pakistani Supreme Court, they were citing US evangelical thinking as a way to say that trans people were new. And they would say, hey, actually, we have documented evidence for thousands of years, and they were like, no, right? So actually, it's a lie. It's based off of a lie that these kind of Western sensibilities are pro-LGBTQ. So we're being weaponized in the service of justifying mass and forever war based off of a fundamental lie. So we have to puncture the lie. We have to actually say, no, homophobia and transphobia is omnipresent in every single culture and society across the world. There are very few streets that I feel safe to walk in, even New York City. What are you talking about? So if you want to talk to me about homophobia and transphobia in the Arab world, in the Middle East, etc., absolutely. But let's also talk about it right next door, because chances are your fixation on that says more about you. I remember just a few years ago, I was receiving some mail, as one does at a post office. They're very charming places where you go to stand in line forever. And yes. And this woman, I don't want to assume, but I think she was white, came up to me and was so uncomfortable because I was speaking to an Indian guy who worked at the post office, and I was looking something like this. And she said, you're so lucky to be in the US because you'd be stoned to death back where you're from. And I was like, girl, first of all, I stone myself. It's called bedazzling a garment. One, two, what? And then you really begin to see the circuitry. You see the circuitry of empire there. You have a brown queer, which contradicts the fundamental grammar of pinkwashing and home nationalism, vibing, being in relation to who they perceive as dangerous, scary, volatile. And that intimacy is so confronting to a particular episteme that the only place to go is imaginary violence. Stop talking about imaginary violence and start talking to me about why I got called a faggot in your neighborhood. That's the role of queers, is to break out, puncture out of these meta-narratives that circulate decontextualized from our lived experiences.
Breaking out of the logic of empire that works in that way through homo nationalism and pinkwashing.
Honestly, that stoning myself joke, I just came up with that. So I know my drag mother's in the crowd tonight, so like, please write that one down. We're gonna have to incorporate that.
It was coined here. It was coined at the grad center. And I think the next question is a perfect transition from that, because I want to ask
Good,
you.
I'm not really good at perfect transitions, just messy and elegant ones, so I'll leave that to you.
So I want to ask you about comedy. In the recent phase of your career, and I know we've talked about how there are different, we're forced to inhabit these different containers, but they're, it's you being you and you expressing your creativity in these different media. But if we could, for a moment, pause on this one media, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. So in the recent phase of your career, you've taken a turn towards comedy. You headlined the New York Comedy Festival in 2021, as well as Netflix's A Joke Festival. You've also, heard on the grapevine, recorded a forthcoming solo special. We don't know where it's coming out. You don't have to tell us. But what do you think the power of humor is? And what drew you to comedy?
I mean, I'm just such an unfunny person. It's just tragic. I just keep trying and no one laughs. Here's the truth. For so long, my entire identity on earth was to be an academic. Shout out to intergenerational trauma that masquerades itself as something else. So the theory of change that I was installed with as a child, I'm meaning here like 4 or 5, was if you outsmart and outwit someone, that's how you get power. But what the joy of transness was that no matter how many arguments, no matter how many archives, no matter how many incredible speeches I gave, that didn't protect me from brutality. So I realized it was always a trap. They want us to get educated and smart, but the truth is people only listen to people with power. Doesn't matter how smart you sound, doesn't matter how articulate, what your accent is. It's about who has power in society is who we listen to. And so this entire approach of thinking that if I just could outsmart homophobia and transphobia was actually absurd. And so that's both devastating and profoundly funny. And that's what comedy is. Living is stand-up comedy because we die. So all of the things that we're wasting ourselves doing, like hating other people, is a joke because, baby, the hatred is actually putting you in chronic flight called allostatic load, which is prematuring your own death. So joke's on you, you know? So actually, when you really think about it, we're all dying and people are wasting their time like texting their exes. By people, I mean me, but what I really want to remind people is that we are fundamentally, constitutively absurd as a species, right? The girls called it like humanoids, they got absurdoid, you know, like constitutively, what defines humans is that when presented with every single opportunity to be free, we sabotage, you know? So that's quite funny to me. So actually, comedy is the most honest articulation of the human condition. Poetry, in so many ways, is an idealized form. It's our best parts, our most beautiful parts. Comedy is raunchy. Comedy is the opposite of earnesty. Comedy is gritty. Comedy has allowed me so much freedom to actually say, I'm not just trans when I'm like in a fun dress, I'm also trans when I'm peeing at a urinal, you know? It brings the location of our politics to the embodied, to the everyday ways in which we navigate the world. I felt like for so long in academia and poetry, there were certain realms of my life that I could write about, but not others. Comedy allows me to write everywhere. Every single part of me is part of it. And then I felt frustrated because right now anti-trans comedy is really in vogue. And I was like, I hate myself too, so there's a business opportunity here, you know what I'm saying? I could make a lot of money doing this, so it's also just like a response to the market. I was like, whoa, you mean that I can use my self-hatred to like make a career? Like that's a really great prospect for transgender people looking for employment in this economy. So that was part of my motivation.
Stop stealing our jobs, Dave Chappelle.
Right? There you go. So what I found through comedy is that for the first time in a long time, I'm having the time of my life. And I'm not just articulating that as a discourse. I'm not just publishing an essay in a really amazing press that we should all be maintaining. I'm not just thinking about it. I'm being it. I'm having so much fun. My laughter per capita has never been higher. I just think it's so funny that people keep on calling Scandinavia developed because it's one of the most humorless places I've ever performed. I have to literally just shake these people in the crowd like, you're allowed to feel, you know what I'm saying? Like, depression has become synonymous with developed in the Western world. I'm not interested in that. I'm trying to have a good time. So I actually feel more developed. What if the marker of our life was not just like our access to food and safety, but actually joy and delight? So comedy has required me to up the ante to be like, I don't want just trans people to be protected. I mean, that's so boring. I want us to be cackling, guffawing, giggling, flirts of laughter. When I think about transgender revolution, it's a soundtrack of transgender laughter everywhere. That's gender-affirming healthcare humor. So what I really have realized through comedy is like, my joy is my responsibility. I'm not responsible for all the healing, the tragedy, the Texas of it all. I mean, yikes. But I am responsible for what I do with it. And what comedy allows me to do is to alchemize all the vitriol and turn it into something beautiful, fun, expansive, liberating. So now I'm just so grateful for this multi-billion-dollar fear-mongering campaign trying to dehumanize transgender people like me, because it gives me comedic content for the rest of my life. Many male comics have to make up things in order to be relevant in comedy. I have material every single day. Everywhere I go, people hand me new jokes. It's so precious. But it's made me it's made me feel more powerful than I've ever felt, because the joke is on them, right? You think what's funny is what I look like. What's funny is that you're obsessed with me. You think what's funny is that transgender people are making up new language. What's funny is that billions of dollars are going towards war and not actually creating a world in which we can live. A world without policing, a world where people have food and shelter, you know, just basic girly things. So what comedy allows me to do is to reorient people's perspective of what they think of absurd is. And that's why clowns are my goats, my role models. People say, you look like a clown. I'm like, thank you so much. Like, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, because what clowns realize is I'm not the clown you are. That's what clownery is as a practice, is what James Baldwin calls an honest mirror. It's being able to look at an absurd world and be like, ha ha ha, you think I'm performing? What do you call what you're doing? And that's where comedy comes from, especially queer comedy, is the desire to actually say, we're all a little bit ridiculous, and that's okay.
Whenever the questions are collected, feel free to pass them up. We're nearing the end of the few questions that I had for you. I guess one question that's particularly important at an institution like CLAGS, we're honoring you with the José Muñoz Award. We were also, thought back to José Muñoz as a scholar. One of the things that CLAGS endeavors to do is to keep a sort of intellectual legacy going, and in that context to also think about mentorship. And so I'd love to hear from you, who are the queer and trans people who have mentored you and have opened doors for you, and how do you pay that forward?
So many. I'll just say two, to be brief, because that's what I've been templating all evening. First, my late aunt, Urvashi Vaid, gave an amazing Kessler lecture in 2010 here called What Can Brown Do For You, included in the book that you can purchase outside to support CLAGS. And, having access to Urvashi in my life as a young queer person fundamentally changed my life. I am precisely what Republicans fear. I had queer supportive elders as a queer young person. Of course they don't want that, because look at what happens. We come as fully fleshed people who don't tolerate their bullshit. We love ourselves more than they're capable of hating us. We know our power, we know our legacy, we know our lineage. I know that I come from people like Sir Lady Java, a black trans drag queen, who's responsible for repealing anti-drag laws in Los Angeles, who when 50 LAPD officers came to arrest her while performing, she shoo-shooed them away. I come from that, right? So of course they want to remove queer history from textbooks. Of course they want to say that we're new, because when we're connected to our ancestors, which is what I felt palpably with having Urvashi in my life, that's when we realize, like, oh, we're good. We're so good, because they're unoriginal. And they keep doing the same homophobic nonsense decade after decade, century after century, and it didn't work. Plot twist, it didn't work. So it's not going to work again. And the way that we know it doesn't work again is when we remember that the last generation dealt with the same thing and still had a good time too. So thank you, Urvashi, for many contributions to our movements, but I think most profoundly to mine, she had the most raucous laughter imaginable. It was so annoying. Oh my God, everywhere you went, she was the loudest freaking laughter. And that's what you miss the most on the other side, the things that annoy us about people, the nuisances. So I'm so grateful to come from Queer Nuisance. Speaking of nuisances, my drag mother is in the crowd tonight. Let's get a round of applause for Lahore Bajistan. Yes. And I texted her just to confirm. She's very busy, just hoeing around town. So I just had to confirm that she'd be here tonight so that I could drag her in this way, in person, and have the distinct flavor of her obnoxious laughter. I think Lahore has done more for us as queer diasporic South Asians than almost anyone I know. And the ways that she's done it is often not ways that are legitimated by institutions like this, through nightlife. because nightlife is a place where lonely people go to be a little bit less lonely, and Lahore got that. And every city she's ever been in, she created an incubation center for the next generation of queer desis to heal from their alienation, you know? And I think that that's revolutionary work, to teach people that they can be glamorous. And I met Lahore when I was utterly unglamorous. I mean, I was really committed to this post-colonial bit of like wearing bow ties and thinking that was ironic, and then ultimately realizing it wasn't. And she saw a version of me that I didn't yet see in myself and helped gesture that out to insist me to up my ante, to up my auntie, if you will. And so I'm so grateful for her, for constantly asking us to be even a little bit more annoying.
Well, that's two of us that feel sort of mentored by Lahore Vagistan. So an extra thank you from me also. Like, I don't know what Queer Desi New York, Queer Desi Boston, Queer Desi Chicago would be without her. So before we turn to the audience questions, I might ask you one question specifically about LGBTQ studies. You were, I know you're enrolled at Rutgers and pursuing a degree in gender studies, and it's not the sort of focus of, it seems like to me, of all your different wonderful
Seems
endeavors.
like to my parents as well.
But the framework of the José Muñoz Award is the recognition of a scholar activist, you, who has promoted LGBTQ studies within the public sphere. Do you think of your poetry and performance as translating queer and trans theory into a more public idiom?
No. There's a way that academics really frustrate me, where art requires an academic in order to be doing theory, but I believe as an artist that art is already doing the theory. And I think that's a tension I've always had in queer studies even, is our need to explain art, our need to say what art is doing rather than experience what art is doing, right? And so what I got frustrated by in a lot of academic spaces is like the need to justify beauty, as if beauty wasn't already doing the work that so much of what this theory says it's doing. I think poetry actually is our first language. It gets disciplined into speech, into the crude machinery of speech, into the economy of language for utility. Poetry is language for beauty, which is anti-utility. So every time I write a poem, I'm doing what José Muñoz suggests about world making. I'm showing, hey, it's not that I'm writing poetry, I'm living it. And what it means to live poetry is to recognize that there are no rules, they're all made up, you get to make them up. Every poem is its own exercise in anarchy of actually saying the only goal for being here is being beautiful and feeling something. That's like a life, just like a poem. And when I'm making a joke, what I realize is, oh my gosh, all of this is stuff that I learned in gender studies, but I'm actually reaching people because it's fun. And I just want to ask all of us in gender studies, like, what if we stopped trying to convince like boring academics that we were rigorous and legitimate and just allowed ourselves to have fun? Then I think it would really be the kind of revolution irresistible that what Todi K. Bambera says, that we've been wanting. Fun is what actually brings people in. It's not fun whenever people are made to feel like they have to use really highfalutin words in order to be taken seriously. Although that can be fun as like camp, like I do that sometimes just for fun. What I would actually ask is that we destroy, obliterate, detonate this binary between scholarship and art and activism. I think that just like all those other categories, poet, comic, whatever, whose interests do they serve? I'm not interested in that. I actually see artists as scholars, not needing scholarly interpretation. I see scholarship as art, at least good scholarship as art. And I feel like this need to reproduce the academy is so installed into us as academics, rather than actually, why are we here? We're here because learning was fun. and then it became professionalized, and then it got a little awkward after that. So I just want to bring back the fun into learning again, because the reason I decided to pursue graduate study was because I was a nerd, unapologetically still am, and I would watch a Nova documentary about black holes and want to tell everyone about black holes. That's how we come into knowledge. But then what the academy does is it teaches us to gatekeep that knowledge, to privatize that knowledge, to become an expert in that knowledge. I want everyone to know what I know. That's why I started doing my book reports during the pandemic, is I was, reading all these incredible books about queer history, the history of colonialism and gender, and I was like, hold on a second. Why is no one talking about this? Let me put some cute little graphics, just make it really accessible and share it. And now if people come up to the street, you help me learn about the history of my people. That's so special. That's my favorite part about all of this. So I guess I'll always be a teacher in my own way. I get most excited being able to teach people things.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, and it ties back. I mean, I so strongly agree with everything that you're saying, and it ties back to what you said earlier about also this space, the stage, but also the university as a gatekept space where you need to perform a certain kind of bourgeois appearance, a certain kind of language, the certain use of words, and appear respectable, right? It all ties together. We need to sort of perform a particular persona in order for the institution to reproduce itself as an exclusionary institution, right?
And I think that's why I'm so enamored and have always been such a fan of CLAGS, right? Is that CLAGS actually is an exception to so many rules of actually saying everybody's invited, And I was so excited to be here and feel so honored to receive this award from an institution that has been a kind of heart in my thinking and so many of our thinking for so long. I just felt the need to say that because I know that especially under this climate, it's really hard to fund programs like this. There's an LGBTQ studies program at Texas A&M University, which is the home university that I grew up next to, and I was there to welcome the creation of the program. I did a show there, a comedy show, which was amazing, and it made me really sad because I was right before the governor of Texas just kind of banned brown people, and all diversity and inclusion stuff, and so what we're seeing is gender studies and LGBTQ studies are often the first targets as part of the consolidation of a political regime, and that's why I think it's important to be stalwart and obstinate in our support of institutions like CLAGS.
Five minutes. So maybe I'll read out a couple of questions to you, and then we'll end after that. So the first question, we actually don't have names on here, but the first question is, throughout your journey, how have you observed capitalism's interplay with gender nonconformity and intersectional progress? And then I think the second one, actually asked by a friend of mine, Jesus, is happen to be the second one here. How do you manage? And I think this is really important. How do you manage the inevitable exhaustion? You were talking earlier about I don't know if I'm allowed to say that you weren't getting enough sleep. How do you manage the inevitable exhaustion that comes with making doing your life's work?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed is that non-binary has become co-opted as a third option. So you'll sometimes be shopping for clothes now. Men's clothes, women's clothes, gender neutral clothes. Hold on. All clothes are gender neutral. But what capitalism has done is taken a critique of a binary gender structure and made it just into a third option that's a catch-all for the chaos of gender, as if there are normal people and then there's the freaks. But the truth is we're all the freaks. No one is actually normal. So what we see continually is that a more substantive, holistic, and fundamental critique of a gender regime, that was me performing bourgeois academic, is being diluted and truncated into its most easily digestible formats, right? So we see this especially with the circulation of non-binary in the public imagination that people imagine to just be an elite college-educated, white, usually transmasculine person, and not actually the over-majority of non-binary people the world over are the girl boys, are the dolls, are the fafafines, are the mouches, are the hijras, are so many pre-colonial, anti-colonial, outside of colonial imaginations of what non-binary is. There's a way in which capitalism has defined a particular non-binary aesthetic that's completely distinct from non-binary life, and whose interests does that serve? So I think those are important conversations to be had. And that second question about exhaustion, I mean, it's really my favorite thing when people ask me about how I practice self-care or boundaries or exhaustion, because I'm like, plot twist, I don't. You know, like I'm very smart at many things, but not taking care of myself. Like, come on. And so I just think that this is really just God nagging on me, because this question keeps on coming up, so I have to like develop a better way to lie. And it's just not really convincing, because yeah, the truth is I am exhausted, but it's a kind of exhaustion that I don't even allow myself to say out loud, because to even embark on that project of taking inventory of the exhaustion would be exhausting. So I don't do that. Instead, I just pump through. And I don't want to romanticize that or glorify that, but it's what I do. And I think that part of my healing, my father's in the room, so he's going to cheer after this, will be in the future when I learn how to rest with the same rigor as I do other things. I'm not there yet, but I think yet is one of the most special words we've created as a species, because it's embodied hope, that word yet.
That's the perfect place to end this, since the way that so many of us also know Muñoz is in thinking about queer futurity and hope the yet. So one more time, join me in thanking Alok for being here.
Well, did I not say that in Alok's presence, we are going to sense the commons tonight? I think you did that, Alok, and thank you, Smaran. And, very quickly, I'm going to step a little bit out of our straight time and take a little bit of detour here, and I'll tell you why. But before that, there's a Bengali word called adda. Have you heard that? I think this was adda. It's called throwing shade. It's like spilling the tea. It is all of it. And it's also, talking about all kinds of bodily fluids. I think we did it all over here. So thank you.
I do need to pee so badly, so thank you for creating the space for that.
Yes. So I'm going to take a little bit of detour now to celebrate a very important person, but I'm going to ask our CLAGS' co-chair of the board of directors, James Harris, to come here and share something very important. So we're going to celebrate a little bit somebody who's very important, that is Laura Westengard, who is our outgoing co-chair. And I'll just say Laura made possible a CLAGS revival ever since she stepped into this leadership position, but I'll let James say more, because James also made that happen. So James, take it over.
Thank you all for being here. I will keep this as brief as I can, while also saying we are very appreciative to you all for being here. As I'm sure you can imagine, doing queer studies work in this moment is incredibly challenging. Doing queer studies inside of this institution presents challenges of its own, really any institution. Working with Laura has made that not only possible, but really magical. And so as Laura walks away as co-chair, we just want to take a second to say, like, we do the behind the scenes thing, right? Where we aren't necessarily, and Laura loves to be behind the scenes. And I gotta tell you, like, if you enjoyed this evening, it's possible because Laura works so incredibly hard. And like, we just want to take a moment to say thank you. So would you please come up so we can say thank you?
Thank
you so much. I will also be very brief. Thanks to everyone who came tonight. It has been an honor to serve as co-chair of the board of directors for the last 3 years. And surprisingly, I think James and I have now merged brains. So it's going to be difficult to extricate myself from James's brain and move on to my own thing. But I have the utmost confidence in Deborah Biswas and James Harris as the ongoing board co-chairs. When I arrived in New York City in 2012, CLAGS was immediately a home for me. And it has been a home for so many people for the past 30 plus years. And I know that this team will bring it into the future as a home ongoing, just for myself and for all of you out there. So thank you so much.
Okay, so now the moment of truth. We are thrilled to present the 2024 José Muñoz Award to Alok Vaid-Menon for their significant contributions to transgender, non-conforming activism and advocacy for the LGBTQIA+ community.
Okay, so listen, I'm a water sign and I have to pee, so that's a lethal combination. They gave me 5 minutes, we're gonna go through it faster. You know, José Muñoz was a scholar that I discovered maybe when I was 18 or 19. Yeah, bookworm. And one of the things that José taught me more than anything was that we had to imagine possibilities for a future. So often, I feel like trauma and violence and fear make us constantly have to sacrifice our dreaming. But what I've learned in my life is that imagination is actually a material struggle. We have to imagine forms of being that don't exist yet. And if transness is to mean anything to me, it's actually a practice of imagining a more resplendent way of being continually. So when I say I'm trans, I don't just mean my gender identity, I mean I'm dreaming of a different world that is more delicate and definitely more fun. So thank you so much to CLAGS for this honor. Thank you, José, for paving the way for so many of us. And thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Cheers.
Before we leave, I want to say thank you. This is one of the most important parts of the night. Thank you to the people who supported the program, LaGuardia Community College and the New York City Council, LGBT and Queer Caucus. Thank you to the CUNY LGBTQIA Consortium, to the Center for the Humanities for promoting our event. Thank you to NYU Press for the free books from José Muñoz. We deeply appreciate that. Thank you so much to our sign language interpreters. Thank you. Thank you to our videographers, and thank you to the GC staff who prepared and maintained this beautiful room for us tonight. Most of all, thanks to you, to the audience. Congratulations once again to Alok. It's so nice to meet his family and close friends. Please come to our future events. You can go to info@clags.org to sign up for our weekly newsletter, our emails, and come visit us again. Thank you, Public Programs, for co-sponsoring. Have a good night, everybody.